And welcome to guest episode 3 of Lessons from Success, guys. I'm your host, Bryn Turner, and today is a very exciting episode. We have Royce on from Monarc Global, and he's going to be discussing his booking service for private flights. This was one of my favourite interviews as we go over the surprisingly low cost of flying private, along with Royce's awesome journey on how he created a tech company as a non-tech founder. We also go over the accelerator program offered at River City Labs, which is an entrepreneur hub and co-working space here in Brisbane City. I particularly love Royce's journey from food trucks to tech entrepreneur, and I can't wait for you all to become his raving fans as well. Now, before we do get into it, I do have to apologise for the audio at the beginning of the interview. It is slightly echoed as the room we're in was quite large. Please do look over this as the interview is extremely valuable to anyone looking at starting a company, and specifically a tech company as well. We do go over other things in the interview, such as his first seed round and other little things that you'd like to know when starting a company and getting it to that stage where investors do become interested. So without any further spoilers, let's get him on the show. So today we've got Royce from Monarc Global joining us. Thank you very much for being on the show, Royce.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So why don't we start by telling us a little bit about your business and everything like that?
Absolutely. Well, Monarc Global is an online, on-demand booking interface for private aircraft charter. So in the simplest terms, we make booking private jets and helicopters very easy, simple, and transparent.
Awesome. That's cool. So how did you sort of get into the private airspace?
Well, I've been a commercial helicopter pilot for 19 years, which was brought to my attention earlier today. A very long time.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. And I, just growing up, flying helicopters and seeing the industry grow. The one thing that I saw that wasn't growing was the ability to book it. There's still a lot of people out there that don't know how to book an aircraft, whether it be a helicopter or a jet. So the accessibility isn't there for them, which means there's a lot of out-of-work pilots, because there's not that much demand. So it became Monarc Global's objective to make booking private aircraft, whether it be a helicopter or a jet, easy and simple, and comparable to traditional travel methods, so that we can showcase and potentially increase the amount of bookings in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that was surprising to me, is that you can almost get a flight to Sydney for basically the same price as business class, and I had no idea that was even a possibility.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. And then, as I was explaining to you earlier, even with empty leg flights, which come up all the time, any one-way flight that's booked as a charter means that the aircraft has to get back to its original base, which creates an empty leg flight. Those can be, purchased at 75% discount of the regular charter amount, which means you can technically get a one-way flight from Brisbane to Sydney or Gold Coast to Sydney for $500 to $1,500 for the entire jet, which makes it less expensive than economy seat pricing.
Yeah, that's insane. I know for me especially, I mean, people who just want to book that just for their first experience on a private plane, and I was under the impression that, and I know I said this earlier, but we're looking at $10,000 minimum to get to Sydney and those sorts of things. So
yeah, well, and that's just it. Like aircraft, like any aircraft, whether it be a commercial airliner or whether it be a private aircraft, is always booked by the hour.
Yeah.
And yes, those hourly rates are pretty expensive. You got pilots' wages, you got hostess wages, you've got fuel. There are plenty of people who book private, but it's about breaking it down into a per seat ratio rather than looking at the overall amount. One of the examples I like to give people is that, it's a $10,000 flight, for a jet to get from Brisbane to Sydney, but for per person, it's $2,000. Which, if you look at business class on Virgin or Qantas, it's pretty much $2,000 round trip for same day trip to Sydney anyway, which makes us comparable. So it's just about training your brain to look at the smaller amounts rather than the large amount. Like anybody says to me $10,000, I can automatically dismiss them. But when somebody says $2,500 or $2,000, per person, my brain starts to look at the mathematics of it and then actually start to realize that there is a huge difference. And if I could fly private rather than fly commercial, save myself also 2 hours of time, because we did the research. If you go from Brisbane to Sydney in a commercial airliner, it doesn't matter if you're flying business class or if you're flying economy, to get from point A, your house, to point B, your destination in Sydney, you're looking at 4 hours and 15 minutes. Yeah. Now, we've done that flight private 1,000 times. 2 hours and 10 minutes is the longest it's taken us to get from point A to point B. So it's a 2 hour savings just by flying private.
Yeah.
So for the same price as business class, but saving yourself 2 hours, you know what I mean, it all becomes what's your time worth.
Yeah, and especially if you're an executive of a company or something like that, I mean, that 2 hours can be extremely valuable time for the business.
Absolutely. We actually, our initial client target was barristers. We were actually able to show barristers how they can make money flying in private rather than flying in commercial. And it was, it was as simple as Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
and the ability to have the space to set up a laptop and work.
Yeah, wow.
If a barrister, handles a case for a certain period of time, they can charge an entire hour to their client. Now, the reason why they fly economy now is because they obviously don't want to, they come at a 800 to $700 to $900 an hour as it is. They don't want to show their client that they're flying, business class on a commercial and inflating the cost of them to get to Sydney to do the case. They'll fly economy so that they can showcase to the client that they're actually trying to save them money. Now, if we can put them on a private and they can make money by working on multiple cases on their way to another case, that saves their current client money, plus they get to work on other cases, which is more time spent actually being productive.
So how come no one's ever done a booking engine like this before? I mean, I would have assumed that something would have been out there. I'll be honest, I've never looked just because I thought private was so far out of my realm. Why has no one done this?
Well, only recently, so maybe within the last 5 years, has there have been companies be able to prove that private aircraft would be booked via online. One of the companies to showcase this was Private Fly out of the UK. There was a huge controversial conversation amongst the aviation industry on whether people would actually book something as expensive as a $10,000 or $15,000 aircraft online and put their credit card forward. They were able to prove that this was actually the case. And the original days of Monarch, we were actually able to prove the same thing. So we had it's a little booking app. And you'd be surprised. People are more than happy to go on there. If they find something they like, they will put their credit card down, they'll pay for it. And that was probably the biggest issue. Now, the second issue was there's still no live availability and no live pricing. There are systems out there that operate in a commercial capacity. So I'll mention a couple. One's Sabre, the other one's Amadeus. Travelport is another one. They're all called GDS systems. So they're global distribution systems, and their tech is based on scheduled services. Now, because private is a non-scheduled service, nor can it be a scheduled service, so the regulations don't allow private aircraft to be scheduled because it competes too much with commercial.
Oh, so that's regulated.
Yeah, it's regulated, so you can
Wow.
actually do that. Actually, in the other regulation that you cannot sell your aircraft by the seat.
Wow.
Which
It sounds like they're trying to silence it, basically, doesn't it?
Well, that's but it is. There's a difference between chartering an aircraft and then a scheduled aircraft. So the airlines spend more money on their air operating certificates and on their airport fees and charges and things like that because they book by a seat. Now, I know that might sound contradicting to what I said earlier about being able to book private by the seat, but it's more about showcasing what the per seat cost is. We still need that initiate charter. Now, once an aircraft is chartered, that initiate charter can release the additional seats in his aircraft for a seat price, and there's no regulation against that. We can only advertise it amongst a club or a group of people, which is why Monarch is another valuable asset to aviators, aviation operators, is because we have a network of individuals who essentially log into our system to be updated on these things. So they're technically considered to be part of a aviation club, which means we can market things to them, like seats on an aircraft or like available empty legs and things like that. So just a little touch base on that. So going back to the GDS system, so there are GDS systems for commercial. Private Fly was able to showcase that private would be booked online, and then most other companies, so some of our indirect competitors like JetSmarter in the States or even Airly here in Australia, their main concentration is on empty leg flights. So the ones we spoke about earlier, the ones with the 75 to 85% discount, and then putting a margin on that and just concentrating on those. Nobody's really looked at tackling the biggest problem and the biggest issue, and that was live availability and live pricing. So why not develop a system that would give access to brokers, agents, or even everyday people, the ability to go onto a system, put to, from, how many people, what time, and search and be given a list of aircraft that are available, and with the pricing broken down into a per seat price, so your brain can actually look at the big price and then the little price, and give you the option to compare that against what today's business class or economy seat pricing would be. Really showcasing the difference and the comparability, and then having the accessibility there for everybody to have that decision and make that decision. And we can essentially create new customers for private.
And how far away do you think you guys are for a consumer to be able to jump on and be able to make that booking?
Not far. We look at probably releasing mid 2019 here in Australia, and then by in 2019 in the States.
Wow, it's funny because 2019 mid sounds so far away, but it's within a couple of months sort of
we're
thing.
Here, well, we're here now. It's January.
Oh, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, so I'm still writing 2018 on everything that I write, but it's 2019 now, which is great. So we're only about 3 or 4 months away from launching an Australia-wide system where people can access live availability and live pricing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So are you going to run it directly through the Monarc Global website, or is it more to just give other people the option to use your booking platform?
Yeah, well, we're going to start off with just concentrating on the agents and brokers. So those who currently book private still go through that manual process. We're going to give access to the brokers and agents to book live availability and live pricing, so they can showcase to their clients instantaneously rather than waiting out that long time frame, which in some cases would enable somebody not to book. So we can pretty much bridge that gap where 50% aren't booking. Now we could probably maybe get 25% more to book because they're getting prices instantaneously. For the operators, it's about putting something on their website that their customers can book instantaneous aircraft through them only. And then maybe look at, our end goal has always been that we want to be on Webjet, we want to be on Expedia. We want to be able to have you as a customer jump on a Webjet and go from Brisbane to Sydney and then see an option for Virgin, Qantas, and then Monarc Global, which is a private option. Click on Monarc Global and realize that the pricing is we actually did a test where we were less than Qantas, but at just about $100 more than Virgin. But even at $100 more than Virgin, I'm sure if you had an option for a private jet, you're gonna go ahead and choose that. I would any day.
Yeah, exactly.
$100 is $100.
I mean, to be honest, even if it was double the price of Virgin, I'd still probably choose the private option.
Yeah, on Jetstar, if you sometimes it's $100 for just to allocate your own seat. So at the end of the day, if you can fly private rather than commercial, again, save that 2 hours time. Why wouldn't you? Yeah.
What are brokers going through at the moment to get someone booked onto the private flights?
Very manual process, like everybody else. So, and we actually went through this last year as well. Excuse me. They, right now it's about phone calls, emails to operators, finding out what the availability is there, finding out what the pricing is. But then again, the operator has to sit down and calculate the pricing, calculate the availability, send off the quote to the broker. The broker would then copy and paste that quote into their own quote system, add their margin, then send that to the customer. Yeah. Once the customer's reviewed it, which could be a few hours, say they need to make a change, it's got to come back and it's got to start that whole process again. Now, they don't just go to one operator, they go to multiple operators so they can get a price comparison. So we got 5 operators now wasting 2 or 3 hours trying to put together this quote to give to this broker. This broker will pick the best couple. He'll transfer that to his own quoting system. He'll give that to the customer. Customer may not look at it for a day, so there's a follow-up phone call. The customer finally looks at it and he sends it back. Yeah, he approves it. So then we got to go back and find out the availability is still current. And if it is, then we can go ahead and start the booking process, which means we got to send an invoice to the customer. The customer will then look at the invoice and then EFT or pay by credit card. For that, then the broker's got to wait for that money to clear in his account before he can transfer the operational cost to the operator. So if you wanted to leave that day or the next day, it's impossible. Yeah. It's just not going to happen. An aircraft operator will not leave without payment. And the way that the current banking situations work, it's very hard to get an instantaneous transfer system. So Monarch solves all of those problems. So
I don't want to jump to conclusions either, but you would assume flying private, you would be quite a successful person. You'd probably need these quick sort of turnarounds on your flights, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. And then that's the thing, like ad hoc has always been pretty much non-existent unless you owned your own aircraft. Yeah. And for the last 10 years, people have gone away from owning their own aircraft because of the expenses entailed to even chartering out their aircraft. So a lot of owners of aircraft even today, they now have these aircraft sitting with operators that now charter the aircraft out. So even as an owner, sometimes they can't even get their own aircraft because it's being chartered. Yeah. For them, that's a bonus because they're making money out of that. But why buy an aircraft if you can't use it? So a lot of mobs in the UK and Europe actually started going with like almost a timeshare for aircraft, which is quite unique as well.
What was the company that started all that? I remember hearing about those recently. It was
there's a few. I think NetJets was one of the first ones.
That was
and Uber's model. I don't know if you've ever seen Uber's pitch deck, but in their pitch deck, they actually put them that they were the NetJets of taxi services. So they actually modeled their initial offering as a NetJets, sort of situation. So, crowd share or crowdsourcing.
Uber was looking at getting into flying as well, weren't they? I think they did Uber, was it
Helicopters,
in Dubai?
yeah, and they have. Yeah, they've done it in Dubai. They actually did it over Melbourne Cup as well.
Oh, wow.
And this is one of the questions that we get asked a lot is it's like, oh, well, we got Uber with millions and trillions of dollars out there. They're going to be competitors and this and that. I'm just like, well, not really. They still need to find aircraft with live availability and live pricing.
Yeah.
So we found over Melbourne Cup when Uber was booking aircraft that we were getting a lot of calls like Airly. Airly concentrates on empty leg flights. But where are they going to get those empty leg flights? The best part about the Monarch system is that when a one-way flight is booked, we at Monarch know about that empty leg before the operator knows about it.
Yeah.
So we actually have a 3-hour window to broadcast that empty leg amongst our clientele before it gets released to the public, which means if we sell within that 3 hours, that empty leg never existed.
Yeah.
So all those companies who concentrate on empty legs won't have any product to sell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because there'll be no empty
Exactly.
legs.
Exactly.
Cup, right?
They're already gone. So that's one of the bonuses that we try to create. So really just a one-stop system that really just streamlines the operators.
Yeah.
We do something for the operator. We help them. And and the byproduct of helping them is helping ourselves.
Yeah, you've had a pretty interesting start yourself into entrepreneurship as well. So you started a restaurant downstairs in Brisbane where we are currently.
Well, even prior to that, we had the restaurants in Canada. So like when I was 19 years old, I started a food truck called Bread and Meat Co. And that food truck within 2 years spread to 5 food trucks. So we had Bread and Meat Co. We had Poutinis, and we were doing quite well for a 19-year-old with 5 food trucks. I was making some pretty good coin. Very happy, and I was in uni at the time, so I was pretty much paying my uni bills, which was great. And over time, instead of hiring employees, I actually hired owners, so I didn't have to physically be there for the trucks to maintain themselves. Yeah. And we ended up selling a few, so we still have the 2 trucks that operate pretty consistently in Canada. The other 3 have been sold to other firms, which is fine.
You've still got 2 trucks right now, right?
Yeah, they still operate. They still go. They do their own thing.
Yeah. Do you keep that like as a passion project, basically, like just what you love? And...
Well, it's because I hired owners, like they're happy to keep the balls rolling. I just essentially at this point I just own equity.
Yeah.
I get no say in the day-to-day operations, which is fine, even though I own the majority of it. But it just does what it does. You know what I mean? And all that end of year profit or that all sits in the Canadian accounts. Should I ever go back to Canada with my family, we're not going there empty. We've got an account with some money in there.
Yeah, that's great.
Over the last 7 years of, 15 years of income that Bread and Meat Co. has made or that Poutini's has made. It's about residual income. I never pulled that money overseas. You get taxed too much, so just kind of leave it there in Canada and do your taxes over there.
Yeah. Bit of a security blanket as well. Yeah.
And then coming to Australia, I got met at the airport by an individual who loved what we were doing out in Canada and really wanted to, start a franchise here in Australia with, long braised meats and slow cooked food. And he loved what we were doing. So he was like, can we do something? So we looked at, Fortitude Valley and we started a shop, Bread and Meat Co. here. And it did quite well. So, we had lineups at the door for the first 3 months, which, they wanted to, like me and my other owners, they wanted to expand. My idea was to expand into smaller shops. Their idea was to expand into bigger shops. Couldn't really see eye to eye on which direction to go.
Yeah.
So I helped them to expand into 3 larger shops. So one in Melbourne, one on Mary Street here in Brisbane. And then the 4th and 5th shop, I kind of bowed out and said, what, I don't see this working with these shops. I can only see them working with smaller shops. So I sold my position to the other owners. And unfortunately, it wasn't long before, a few of them went under. But, luckily, there's still one in Melbourne. Yeah. There's still a truck in Melbourne, so we got 1 shop and 1 truck in Melbourne that are still operating. That's just the Brisbane ones that shut down. But yeah, that was really, really good. So the sandwiches were huge. Again, Canadian model. So we had big sandwiches for a low price. Yeah. Everything was under $10.
That's awesome.
It's very hard to transfer a Canadian idea to an Australian idea because everything's so much more expensive here, and we didn't take that into consideration. So we should have been charging $15 to $17 a sandwiches rather than $10 a sandwich.
Well, I mean, even our 7-Eleven sandwiches is like $7, $8.
Exactly. So. But the best part is we were still profitable based on volume. So we had that many people coming through the shop that we were still actually profiting. No, not a massive profit, but a minimum profit.
Yeah.
So had we been charging the actual amount that we should have been charging, we would have been hugely profitable. but again, not enough to validate $100,000 rental shop.
Yeah.
We were talking about earlier, how many sandwiches for $100,000, and then plus your wages, forget about it. You're doing 250 sandwiches a day just to cover costs, and that's just, you just can't bank on that.
Yeah, is that where you see the downfall sort of happening? Was just the overpriced shop fit outs that they were doing? Or?
Yeah, it's just rent and wages. Like I said, on weekends you're paying, sometimes an apprentice chef, $50 to $60 an hour. You know what I mean? For minimum traffic, it doesn't really ring true. I understand penalty rates are there for a reason, but I think for specific industries, they have to be a little bit more reasonable. Like in Canada, for instance, we have the minimum wage in Toronto was this is going back a few years, but I don't know if this changed, but it was $6.85 an hour minimum wage, but the server minimum wage was $5.85 an hour.
Yeah.
So why is it $1 less? Yeah, we get tips, and they make tax-free tips because you can't really determine how much cash somebody's made in a day. Yeah. But that's the industry, So things have changed for the industry specific, and I think that they could probably do the same thing here, which makes it a lot less. But this is why a lot of restaurants go under, is because there's not that. Small businesses is the backbone of the Australian economy, but we really have to concentrate on supporting those small businesses and supporting them, based on the industry and not just as a small business as a whole. Because each industry has their own kind of, quirks and little things that need to be looked at. So, and that's one of the ones that I found for hospitality is a 17 or 18-year-old kid being paid $60 an hour on a Sunday is ridiculous, Yeah. So.
I know they've definitely cut back on penalty rates now. I think it's time and a half is the maximum they're getting now.
Yeah, which is a step in the right direction. But again, for those with families, and I can see the value of needing that.
Exactly.
If you're taking somebody away from their family on the weekend, they need to be compensated for that. Yeah. But again, just looking at the industry and making things industry specific, I think would make things a lot easier, I guess.
For sure. And we'd rather have more like delicious restaurants around than we would have no restaurants because they can't afford to sustain. So,
exactly.
Yeah. So when Monarch Global first started, was it always this idea, or did it sort of develop to this over time?
No, it developed to this over time. So Monarch started off as almost like an online brokerage service. So an app that people can go onto and book, from a customer point of view, was instantaneous. They can see an aircraft, they can book it. They can book out as many seats as they wanted because it was based on a club model. You had to, you would pay $1 to use the app, so that made you a club member in a year. Or Infinity membership was paid for that $1. So, but that constitutes a club is when a membership fee is paid. So by charging $1, we made sure our membership was paid, which means you can book out 2 seats, you can book out 6 seats, you can book out, as many seats as you wanted. And it was great. We did Hamish and Andy last year, and that brought 30,000, people to, our app. So we got downloads and we got people, chatting about us, which was great. But where we were not hitting the nail on the head was, we were getting, jets being booked and we're getting 40% full or 30% full, and that wasn't enough to cover the expenses of the aircraft. So we knew that something had to change, so we started to play with that model a little bit. And when it really came down to the nitty-gritty, we realized that in order for Monarch to succeed, we needed to get that live availability and that live pricing. And in order to do that, we needed to provide the operators with something that they would use every day. Yeah. It's very hard to get something for the operators to use every day, especially seeing as it's been a manual process for the last 3 decades. So, or even more than 3 decades. So now it's about training, somebody who's been doing something the same way, for 30, 40, 50 years, and saying, hey, now there's this new way to do it, and it's going to save you all this time. Even then, sometimes it's just a bit of I'm not really interested because I don't understand it. Yeah. So we've had to tackle it in a very unique way, which is interesting.
Yeah, I know you had one really big hurdle when you first started. Would you mind sharing that for us?
Yeah, well, we obviously tried to get some marketing underneath us, and we targeted some really high-end concierge services, or one in particular who had promised us the world. We can market you, we can get you some high net worth individuals out of Sydney, and just big promises, and here's my rate, and it's going to be this much now and this much when we finish, and they took it upon themselves to kind of offer up free aircraft for likes on a Facebook or likes on an Instagram, which wasn't cleared with me. Even as far as giving away, a whole jet or a package at a charity event. So when we eventually found out about it, it was pretty much too late. Like our name was there. These people had won this package. They were starting to contact us to figure out when they can fly. We tried really hard to make it work with empty legs, but the schedules just weren't meeting up, and it just became like the biggest headache where we had to take a few months off and kind of pay off some debt that was acquired for us based on some concierge service who thought that marketing was about giving away free things in order to get people to like you, and that's never been the way that I thought. So
not at all, especially not a prestige service like you're offering.
No, that's just it, and you find out very quickly that small mistakes in aviation are expensive mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, giving away a jet, arguably quite an expensive mistake.
Well, that's just it. It actually wouldn't even have been that bad if it was just tailored a little bit better. Like if we had allocated a one flight, with 10 seats and said, okay, we can give away one. That at least would have been a $25,000 loss or a $30,000 loss rather than $150,000 or $175,000 loss. So, because it just wasn't structured properly, and it was, basically just, all he wants to see is the analytics on Facebook and analytics on Instagram go up, and he'll know that I did my job. But what you promise these customers under the Monarc brand is what affects us in the overall outcome. So. That was really hard, because reputation with other operators. We started getting calls because the clients would call them saying, "Hey, we got this guy," and this is like, oh, such a headache. But we got through that, which is, was hard. Really hard. And then to start from the ground again, and work our way back up, that was difficult as well. So, but we, had paid off all of that, ridiculousness, and then we started the RCL Accelerator shortly after that, which was one of the benefits for I guess the founder mentality as well. So my mentality, and do I want to continue in an industry that just costs me this much money and this much stress and this much pain and agony. But over that time, we were sitting, like, me and my co-founder Monica, we sat down and we really just hammered out what we wanted to do. We both have GDS experience at Flight Center head office. So Monica, my co-founder, she actually headed up the integration process for Sabre and Amadeus with Flight Center products. So that's actually the industry that she is really, really good at. And she and myself decided we were going to try to build something for private, and the difficulty would be like a non-scheduled service GDS. And how do we go about doing that? So, after months and months of putting our heads together, we actually came up with the answer, which is great, and just started implementing that. Went through the accelerator, and we're able to accelerate to almost $5 million in charter in about 5 months, which is great.
Yeah, that's absolutely awesome. And how many staff have you got now? You went from just you and Monica?
Yeah, to 9. Yeah, so we got 9 staff now. Yeah. So
would you mind running through just what their roles are, who they are?
Yeah, we've got 3 devs, so 3 developers on board. We got one who's acting CTO, but he's part-time, and then we have 2 full-time developers. We've got 2 BDMs, so 2 business development managers slash sales. So we have Scott Woods and we've got Ash Brown. We've got there's myself and Mon, and then we also, it's really hard without seeing them. Sometimes I forget, my own staff. We've got K1, who's really good at research and development, so R&D. He comes in and he, basically sets the tone for the operators that we are going to target next, and he'll make that initial phone call to know that we're heading out that way, and set up those meetings, which is really, really good. Add mentors to us. We're sitting at about 20. We do have a really big team at the moment. Cameron Dean, who we just met today, who's the second dev, hired out of Virgin back in the 80s. So he's almost like the godfather of aviation tech. And he's loving what we're doing. So he's looking to come on board. So we are, we're expanding quite, not only just in technology, but we're expanding in our team. And, we just moved from a desk to an office, but it already looks like the office this year, even though we just moved in, is a bit too small for the kind of team that we have. So
that's a great problem to have.
It's a great problem to have, breaking a 6-month lease because your team's growing, exponentially. and we just announced our seed round. So we're doing a seed round raise at the moment. So
yeah, we'll get to the seed round in a second. RCL Accelerator, tell us a little bit about that. So for people that don't know, RCL is River City Labs here in Brisbane, and they help out startups and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, RCL Accelerator was great. The interview process was we started to do the interview application for RCL Accelerator. We started on a Sunday, I remember, because somebody had sent me a link that they were doing an accelerator program. I started to do the application that day. And then that afternoon, I was actually sitting at home, and I got an email from Christo, who's the head of the accelerator. He's like, "Oh, you've only got a couple hours left to finish your application." I'm like, "Well, what are you talking about?" It turned out the application deadline was actually that night. If you've seen an application for an accelerator, it's actually quite... there's a lot of information that's going there, including self videos and founder speaking videos and all the things that I didn't know how to do. So yeah, I really scrambled that day to get an application in. So I finalized the application, I got it in, and we got declined.
Oh wow!
So we got an answer 3 days later from Ellie, and we got declined, based on a few specific points. And when I was reading those points, I realized that I think because of a rushed application, I didn't really get my point across, and that we actually had all the things that they had suggested we didn't have. So I, simply just thanked them for taking the time to review my application, but then insisted that the information that they had may not have been correct based on the fact that I only had hours to do an application, and then I went through each dot point that they had, and then I had the answer to that. So. Sent that off, not expecting any outcome, but just wanted to kind of do a little pushback and say, hey, listen, I apologize if we didn't get everything we wanted to get across on an application, but this is the actual facts. And then we got called in for an interview that day. So went into that day and did the interview with panels. There was Lou Jury, Peter Ellis, who's the CEO of River City Labs, Ellie and Christo. And even during the interview, you can tell that there's a mixed room. We got the aviation enthusiasts on one side, and you got the tech individuals on the other side. And again, non-tech founder, and this is a technology accelerator. Yeah. It was kind of just a split room. And then we got invited to join the accelerator, but it was join the accelerator without the funding, or they really tried to we were the I guess the black horse.
Yeah, you got a participation.
Oh prize. yeah, exactly. So we fought and struggled to get into this accelerator, and we did a little bit of pushing back. They did a little bit of pushing back, but at the end of the day, we got accepted, and everything's been everything was good. Yeah. Now going into the accelerator is always set a midpoint milestone. So they invest X amount of money. They help accelerate you from a startup to an actual business, and increase your internships, increase your staff, basically increase your mental thinking. Pete Ellis is really good at founder whiplash and founder mental health, which is important, because these are things that you don't think about as an entrepreneur, as a founder, that you want to do everything yourself, but doing that for long periods of time, you're going to run yourself in the ground pretty quickly. Yeah. So they kind of train you how to, get somebody who's never been an owner or a corporate person who led big teams, and get them knowing what it's like to be that individual, and training yourself to be that individual.
Is it a lot of classroom learning sort of stuff, or is it?
Yeah, it's a mixture. Practical? Yeah, so Mondays and Tuesdays was pretty much they would bring in experts from industry, so pitch experts, and experts into marketing, experts into financial raising, experts into founder mental health. And we would do that Mondays, Tuesdays, and sometimes Thursdays. Wow. And then it was working on your businesses and contracts coming in for investment. So even from the get go, you're all over the place. You got legals, you've got classes, you got your business, you want to accelerate, but it wasn't long. You set your midpoint milestones. So they have a midpoint where they give you part of your investment. You got halfway to get to a certain midpoint milestone that you set for yourself, but it can't be easy. It has to be almost unachievable, and it could be sales based, it could be user based, just whatever your business entails. Sorry. You set that with and that unlocks your second tranche payment, which is the bigger part of the investment, which would help you financially with expanding your business and traction wise. And that's hard. It's really hard to be in classrooms, working on a business, doing legals and doing all that yourself. But it was really, really unique and actually started to get easier and easier and easier. And they just kind of make sure that you're structured, and even though you're the boss and you're the head of your own company, having meetups and deep dives with experts, and mentors, it really keeps you accountable for your own business. So you're still kind of answering to people, even though the buck actually stops with you. And until you actually realize that the buck actually stops with you and that you can actually push back on, they would suggest 1,000 things. Like, you'd get Lou suggesting one thing, Christo suggesting another thing, and then Ellie suggesting another thing. And, Founder Whiplash is one of those things where everybody has a different idea for your own business, and you want to make everybody happy, but you forget that you're the guy. You're the boss. The only person you need to make happy is you.
That's so true.
Well, that's just it. But everybody's the same. Like, we're all people pleasers. So we all want to make sure that everybody's happy, and because these represent the investors that have initially invested in your company, you want to make them happy. But you just really have to focus on what's best for your company. And one of the things that we push back on that made us, like, in my opinion, the leaders of the accelerator, B&E4 accelerator, was we had a trip to TechCrunch in San Francisco. All the teams went, So we flew out to San Francisco, but we actually didn't make it to TechCrunch. Why? Because I set up meetings with operators while I was out there, and instead of going to TechCrunch, where I was in a tech festival for 2 or 3 days and met with other companies who were just telling their story, I actually was out there over 6 days in 8 states, where I talked to 98 operators, and I closed 100% of them.
Wow.
So instead of being in the TechCrunch, I actually did business, and I achieved and got traction. 98 operators in 6 days in 8 states. I was tired.
I can imagine.
But that was validation for my business and my tech. And out of that 98, an additional 74 have come on board just based on referrals. It gives us 172 operators in the U.S. just waiting for our tech. And that was the difference between us and the other teams. The other teams were happy to go and meet with Salesforce and have Salesforce talk about what they can do. And not that there's not value in that. Of course, there's value in that. But if I'm going to be spending $5,000 for round trip tickets to San Francisco, I'm going to have somebody sitting at a booth at TechCrunch, but I'm also going to have another part of the team that's actually out there doing work. And that's exactly what we did. And out of that entire 1 week in San Francisco, we were the only ones to come out with massive traction. And not just a little bit of traction. We had the traction that most founders dream about, and validation for our product. So that's one of the hardest things when you're doing technology or any business, is validating your product. And this validated it at 100% ratio, which was great.
Well, 100% is crazy. I don't
really
know anyone else that's ever got 100% traction.
Well, and it's all about for us, sales has never been the issue. Technology has always been our milestone and our Achilles heel. Like, again, non-tech founder, I had to rely on other tech developers to build something that I know the back end in my head, but again, non-tech founder means I can't even get that across to a tech person to build it. So it's finding that tech person who's also aviation, who understands what I'm saying, and that can facilitate that to the tech guys, so that we actually get built what we want to get built.
Is that who you think you found today with the Virgin?
That's who well, he's who we thought we found, was introduced to us a couple months ago, but we've been trying to get him slowly over the fence. Having exited a company of his own, doing quite financially well with it. He's got other projects on the go, so it's just been trying to find the right title, the right time, the right position. So whether it be coming on as an advisor, whether it be coming on as CTO, or whether it be coming on 1 day a week or 3 days a week, and whether it's going to be a salary or just equity, all of these decisions have to be made. So we're getting closer to that end goal of what we're going to be having with Mr. Dean. And again, like, for me, having him on board, like the godfather of tech, is just like, wow. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm almost starstruck, even though I know, you can put Hugh Jackman there and I wouldn't be starstruck, but you give me the godfather of aviation tech, and I was like, oh, wow, nobody's ever heard of him, but you're a genius in my book. That's exciting. And having him being able to run a team of a little bit of aviation experience, but not to the extent of he has, and he understands what we're trying to do. To again, it's a lot of people have dreamt about doing what we're doing. Yeah. We're the only ones doing it. So it really just comes down to money, time, and the ability to get over those hurdles and get it done.
Yeah. On the topic of money, so you've just started the seed round now, is that right?
Yeah, so we started, just prior to Christmas. I know that seems weird, but the reason we launched it just before Christmas was we had just finished up the accelerator program. At the accelerator, so we did 6 months. We were the only team with massive amount of traction as far as sales. Our target was 5 million, and we did 4.35, so almost $4.4 million in total revenue charter. Wow. Sorry, total charter revenue, which is really, really good for 5 months' work. We grew our team from 2 to 9, which again was really, really big. And our tech, so we've actually built our tech twice in that time. So we built our tech the first time with one CTO who decided that we actually don't even know what he decided, but anyway, he tried to keep it from us. He wouldn't give us access to it, so we had to get rid of him and then start from scratch, which means we built it twice, but we got our MVP built and we got our initial pilot customers on board, and we've just started filtering out to other customers. So overall, we have about 250 plus operators who are just waiting for our tech, so we just had to finalize our tech so we could start onboarding them, and this year is all about onboarding. So we will start to bring in the assets, which is aircraft and multiple aircraft. So as an example, we've got Avcare here in Brisbane. They've got 5 aircraft. You know what I mean? So right off the bat, we've got 5 aircraft that we can have leaving from Brisbane. But we've also had 3 more operators here in Brisbane. So that means we have about 15 to 20 aircraft that we can access here in Brisbane. So that means, for you as a customer, if you're going from Brisbane to Sydney, and if you type in Brisbane in your departure location, you will have 15 aircraft that you can choose from. And we have 250 of those types of operators globally, just waiting for our tech. So that's going to give us 10,000 plus, maybe 1,500 to 2,000 aircraft approximately, that we can play with. But then we have a team of sales and BDMs out there just closing more and more every day. So seed round we've launched, so that's going to help with our expansion into the States. Like I said, we did the hard work in the 6 days, but we need to build support support tech teams out in the States. We need to get some more sales guys in the States, and that all costs money. So, in order to expand our tech here, help us expand our reach in the U.S. and Canada, as well as the U.K. and Europe, which is a big portion of the market. We're doing a seed round to kind of help that funding.
Can anyone just get in the seed round, or is it professional, sophisticated investors only, or?
It's for the right investors, you know what I mean? So we're happy for anybody to come on board. We're happy with aviation enthusiasts. We're happy with, there is a minimum requirement, you know what I mean? So I think 50,000 is the minimum, investment amount. Our company is valued at 5 pre-money, and it'll be 6.5 post. So we're raising 1.5 for 25%. You can contact myself or anybody at the team, info@monarchglobal.com or Royce@monarchglobal.com, and we can always send you the information that you need.
Yeah. Have you got so I guess on the topic we spoke about failure a lot. Well, what are your biggest milestones that you've achieved so far in the business? Sorry to jump back to
that's fine. Well, tech has obviously been the biggest one. Like I said, having built it twice as a non-tech founder is very frustrating. But this comes back to self-learning. You know what I mean? So used to be very quick to anger and chucking tables across the room and having a big fit. But when the first CTO ended up really doing wrong by us, it was either chuck a tantrum and go into a depression mode, or just figure out what to do next. And it was only about a week before we had 2 new tech guys on board, starting in the fresh build. And a really reliable acting CTO to come on and facilitate that, as well as deal with the legal part of losing a CTO that way. So it was really unique to see I mean, a person who's used to jumping first and thinking later, be able to within a week go from losing 3 months worth of tech, a CTO who held 30% of the business, and be able to buy back those shares and start the legal process of getting the money back, and start the legal process of getting the tech back. Really just pushing our rights, that morality clauses in the contracts and the shareholders agreements, and how we did right by you and you haven't done right by us. It's really, it can do number to your brain. But,
absolutely.
It's I was getting complimented by a few people on how well I've handled the situation.
Just keep you cool.
Just kept my cool and just did what I needed to do. You know what I mean? And that resulted in, so this is back in September. And so since September, like I said, $4.3 million worth of sales. And during Melbourne Cup, we did over $1 million in just the one day.
Yeah, wow.
So it really just goes to show that I could have gone two ways there. I could have packed it all in and said, what, screw this. This is the umpteenth time I've been messed over with Monarc Global. Or okay, let's figure out another way to keep moving forward. So
just another hurdle, basically.
Another hurdle. Yeah. And the thing is that you're never going to stop jumping hurdles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
That's true.
it's just we can't look for them. You know what I mean? We just have to wait until try to prepare to alleviate any potential hurdles that you can see.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be hurdles that you can't see, and then it's just about how you deal with those situations, and a lot of self-training.
The bigger you get, the more hurdles there are.
Well, that's just it. Well, that's just it. Little hurdles can end up being really big hurdles. So
exactly.
You want to try to minimize your risk as much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like you've had a couple of issues with people in terms of hiring and with the marketing and then the CTO. What have you learned from that? And could you give any advice to people that are looking at hiring as to potential maybe warning signs or what they should look into before?
Yeah, I think I think as a Canadian, I'm generally trusting instantaneously.
Yeah.
And again, this comes back with like self-training. Is that I like anybody in any type of customers oriented company, you really just want to make people happy. You see the good in everybody, you see the strengths, and you can also see weaknesses. I think the biggest thing that I can say is really just trust your gut. With the initial CTO, like my gut told me that something wasn't right, and I ignored that for the purpose of getting into the accelerator. I needed a tech person to get into the accelerator, so I made a decision, that too early in order to get something that I thought we needed right off the bat, when I probably should have listened to my gut. Even with the marketing guy, it's just not believing everybody's going to say they can help you, they can do this, they can do that. You're going to get a lot of people that say, I can do this, that, and everything for your business, and you're going to love me, and blah, blah, blah. It's going to cost you this. I just think that's the wrong way to go about it. I've really become somewhat of a success, prove me success before I pay you anything. The next marketing individual that came around was, with a retainer of $3,000, I could do this, this, and this. And I'm just like, all right, that sounds good. So why don't you come on board with us for 3 months, do it for free, show me what you can do, and if it's successful, then I'll start paying you, and I'll actually back pay you the 3 months. And he didn't take it. So I was like, well, it's risk free for you. You're just doing 3 months of work on the tick, and if it's successful, then I'll back pay you for the 3 months, and we'll get you on board. But it's a salesperson will always rely on themselves. So a salesperson is happy with commission because they know they're good. You know what I mean? So if you go to a salesperson and say, listen, commission only, and you get a salesperson, I don't work for commission only. Okay, so you're not a good salesperson.
Yeah.
You need that backup plan. You know what I mean? But if you go to a salesperson who's really good, and you say it's commission only, if this is how much commission you can make, let's go. You know what I mean? They'll go because they rely on themselves. And it's the same with people. People are going to promise you the world, but make sure that they can rely on themselves to do it. So create a situation where they have to prove that they can do what they say they can do, which isn't going to cost you anything, but you're more than happy to facilitate that cost should they be successful. So a success fee. And this comes with raising as well. You know what I mean? Like the amount of people that come to me and said, I know so many high net worth individuals, we can raise $1.5 million for you, no problem, within 2 weeks before Christmas. Great, prove it. You know what I mean? Let's see. Yeah. I want to see term sheets for $1.5 million. And if you can do that, I will give you 5% of what I raised as a success fee. You know what I mean? So 5% of $1.5 million, $15,000.
Not bad for a week's
Not
work.
bad for a week's work, right? Why not? Actually, I think that's one. I think that's only 1%. What's 5% of 1.5? My math is not.
Well, yeah. We'll definitely edit this part out. I mean,
Yeah. The fact that we don't even know our own math.
for first day back after Christmas, like everyone's allowed a little bit of a little bit of relaxing time. It's fine.
Well, let's just say I think about 30 grand.
30 grand.
Anyway, we'll leave that out, but we'll say 5% of... I didn't even have time. I didn't have time to calculate it.
How did you come up with that math so quickly? I'll edit out the calculation
Genius,
part.
yeah. Genius. But, and I do that. And if the guy is willing to stick around, then he's confident in himself to make sure that he can get that done. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we've had that. And we've actually had guys that stay on with us for 3 or 4 months and haven't been able to do it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But, they've stayed on. You know what I mean? They try to do it. And even just watching them try to do it, you see what their work ethic is. You know what I mean? And even if they're having a hard time struggling, you can sit them down and say, listen, so you promised this and you haven't succeeded. But what I do see in you is a drive that you keep going. You know what I mean? And you could probably find maybe a different area for them, or there's many ways to do it. But yeah, create yourself a situation where you benefit and you're happy to go ahead and have them benefit, but their benefit is only based on a success. Yeah. And that'll probably save you a lot of time and money, because everybody has a retainer, you know what I mean? And very few, in my opinion, can actually live up to what their retainer is. Or they'll say, oh, my retainer is this per month, and you probably won't see any results for about 3 or 5 months, but after 5 months, you'll see massive results. What is that basically saying to you? Is that you got to waste 5 months of money in order to start seeing results? For me, that's garbage. Yeah. You know what I mean? So if it's 5 months to get to that result, then why don't you work, for free? Show me you want my business. Work for me for free for 5 months, and especially if it's only 1 day a week. And as soon as we start seeing those results, then we'll go ahead and pay your retainer. You know what I mean? And put that in a contract, and make sure all your I's and T's are dotted. You know what I mean? That's probably the only advice I can give.
Yeah. And people have to remember as well, working for a startup, I mean, money isn't flowing. It's not like you're working for a big business and, there's money getting thrown at everything left, right, and center.
Exactly.
This is something that they have to work at. And then if you do make it, it's something that you'll remember, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. A startup is a different beast than an actual company. And don't get me wrong, we're doing some decent money, but we're still bootstrapping.
Yeah.
We
have to, right?
It's hard to say, we've done millions of dollars worth of sales, in the last 5 months, and you're still bootstrapping. What do you mean? How does that? Well, everything comes at a cost. You know what I mean? And every time we've done, X amount of money, we've increased our staff, which costs us X amount of money. You know what I mean? And our runway, goes a bit further. A bigger office costs more money on a monthly campaign. And then you got marketing, which you need to expand because you're starting to get more generating coming in. So you want to actually increase your marketing so you can keep more coming in. So, you know what I mean? It's very difficult. But the best part about a startup is that you get in on the ground level, which means the 4 or 5 years that you really put in hard work, and during those days where you may be getting acquired or looking at IPO, the reward is what's there for all those who were able to stick it out in the beginning. It's very, and I'm one of those individuals as well. I've had a lot of early days when we were looking for people to invest in Monarch, we were getting turned down. Oh, come see us when you've hit this. Come see us when you hit that. And the thing is, I keep track of these people, but not so that I can utilize them in the future, but so I can utilize them that when we are a success, you know what I mean? And these people start approaching us because they want to, ride the coattails. I can actually say, no, you had an opportunity when we were nothing and just a startup. And now because we're successful, you want to ride our coattails to success. It's like, no, that's not how this works. So I keep a database of people I don't want to work with as well as a database of people I want to work with. Yeah. So it really just it comes both ends. I know that might sound a little vindictive, but
no. I mean, loyalty is something that
loyalty is everything, and the best revenge is success, right? So
yeah, exactly. And it's not like you're harming them. I mean, it's just don't ride my coattails at the end of it all.
Absolutely,
really.
Yeah, 100%.
Last question, because I know you've got to go. Some insight to what would you give yourself if you could speak to 25-year-old you again?
Oh, 25-year-old me. Okay.
Well, actually, let me rephrase that. What would you say to yourself if you could speak to 19-year-old you that was just starting the food trucks and maybe looking at starting a company? What advice would you give?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd probably I spent a lot of money on my education and didn't really do much with it. So I did international finance. I spent about 3 weeks in an investment bank on the recall desk. Realized that I hated being in a cubicle. I hated being corporate. I quit my job and went across the street to the bar, the Martini bar, and I started bartending for them. And it was one of the best jobs I ever had.
You don't need an international finance degree to bartend?
No, unfortunately you don't. Yeah, and it wasn't about my regret's not the education part. My regret is probably maybe putting a little bit more thought into what I wanted to do with my future. Now I got my license license, like my commercial helicopter license, on a bet with my dad. So it wasn't actually an aspiration of mine to become a pilot. Funny enough, I was watching Jeopardy, and one of the questions was colorblind people couldn't be pilots. It was a true or false question, and I think it ended up being false. Colorblind people could be pilots.
I honestly thought they couldn't.
Yeah, well, it's a common misconception, and my dad was arguing with his lawyer like 2 days later. I heard him in the kitchen arguing about colorblind people because he wanted to get his pilot's license to fly his own helicopter, my dad was like, well, you can't because you're colorblind and colorblind people. And I came in and basically said, oh, that's a common misconception. Of course he could, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, wow.
And my dad bet me that, if I went in and did my testing and I passed, he would pay for my license.
Oh, wow.
So I went in and did my testing and I passed with flying colors.
Yeah.
I went in knowing the answer because I just saw it on Jeopardy 2 days before. Didn't tell them that. Yeah, Jeopardy's a genius. Yeah. Alex Trebek, you're the best. So I went in and then I got my commercial license. So 6 months, he paid for my commercial license, and I really just didn't really anticipate on doing anything with my license, but I was backpacking through Europe. I was in, I was looking for a deckhand position on a mega yacht coming out of the south of France. They needed a pilot. It was a helicopter I was endorsed in. I applied for the pilot's wage. I thought it was €250 a day, but it ended up being €2,500 a day.
Wow.
Cash in hand, and he started filtering me to all of his other mega yacht buddies for the entire year. I was making €2,500 a day as a pilot. And then in the off season, I started volunteering with Doctors Without Borders and WHO in Africa.
Oh, that's incredible.
So I'd spend my summers in the Mediterranean. I'd spend my winters in Africa, volunteering. And for 5 years, my hours were going skyrocketing. I was making a ton of money. And I just fell in love with flying helicopters in general.
Yeah. All started from a bet as well off Jeopardy, right?
Jeopardy. Love you, Jeopardy! But yeah, then the passion for piloting just became the thing. So really, really happy with that. I'm really happy that I did that. But again, it just goes to show you never know what you're going to be. You know what I mean? People who train their entire lives to be doctors and lawyers, they do all that training and they continue on that path because they've done all that training. But sometimes you just have to let go of everything that you've learned and start something new because it's your passion. And the one phrase that I always live my life by is do something that you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
And here we are.
Here we are. Love and life.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best advice you could give to someone that might not know what they want to do at the moment is?
Just, you'll figure it out. Yeah.
Don't rush it.
Yeah, don't rush it. Take your time. And do what you love. And you may not even know what you love even just then, but you'll find it. You'll figure it out. But do what you love now, and then it might turn into something that you love later, and then it'll turn into your ultimate love later on. But you may not even be starting your career or the career that you're going to be finishing on until you're 30, 35. So don't be afraid. There's no time limit in success. The KFC Colonel, I think he started his business at 68.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of time in life, but
had the best last 12 years of his life.
Exactly. The best 12 years.
He was the Colonel, right?
He's the Colonel. That's awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Did you have any shameless plugs that you wanted to slot in there?
Shameless
plugs. So, did you want to plug the business? Anything that you're doing? Anything that we can?
Like I said, we're middle of race. So if you're interested in jumping on board with the newest GDS aviation for private aircraft, give us a call. Royce at monarchglobal.com or info at monarchglobal.com. We're happy to send you our deck and term sheets and
awesome.
Really exciting times.
Any social media as well that people can follow?
Yeah, we've got LinkedIn, Facebook, all Monarch Global, so MONARC, there's no H. Monarch actually stands for Monica and Royce Crown,
awesome.
Which is my wife and my co-founders. Very regal, but we don't put the H in there because there's no H in any of our names. So
yeah, well, it doesn't deserve to be there.
It doesn't deserve to be there.
Get out of there, H.
Get out of there. We don't need you.
All right, thank you so much, Brad. I thoroughly appreciate you coming
My pleasure.
on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show today. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed it, and jump over to lessonsfromsuccess.com.au and make sure you jump on that email list so I can notify you as soon as any more shows come out. I'm your host, Bryn Turner, and thank you so much for joining us.